Howdy folks, AJ coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer. And today's vlog will be about the topic of it is a good time to be alive and to be a geek. And I say that because um, there was a time back in, at least in my lifetime, there was a time where if you were a Dungeons and Dragons player or somebody that collected comic books or somebody that was into doing modeling, you know, uh, plastic models or any kind of modeling at all like that, you know, being a hobby type person, stamp collecting, anything like that, um, you were pretty much, ostracated. Um, and we all kind of, back in those days, we kind of formed our little groups of fellow geeks who shared, interest with one another. And it was normally at places like your local game store, and there would be a back room, where everybody would, sit and play and talk about geek things, and geek culture and all that. And now, in this day and age, and I'm not exactly sure when the turning point was, but now uh, to be a geek is to be celebrated. Um, we have shows like on TV, like The Big Bang Theory, which probably gets some of the credit, because I think that that there was a resurgence in geek culture that we were seeing with the Lord of the Rings movies and those types of things, and then the Big Bang Theory came into our living rooms, and uh, it was a huge hit. So people started really embracing geek culture again, because they would show them playing Dungeons and Dragons and talking about Star Trek and Star Wars and and all those types. And they were building robots. And they built a fighting robot and they play paintball and all these different things. And excuse me, I'm gonna get a little coffee here. Sorry about that. And and these things, people enjoyed the show because it was funny. They were kind of poking fun at geek culture, but then again, they were also kind of celebrating it. So I think that might have been one of the bigger turning points. I really do think that Peter Jackson and the people that made the original Lord of the Rings movies, uh, I think that, and they decided, instead of making something with a small budget, some cheesy version, they decided to go all in, so to speak, and really back the idea of making these epic, you know, movies of fantasy, and based on a masterpiece, of the Lord of the Rings. And of course, we got Peter Jackson to direct it, which was awesome, and he did a great job with him. And I think that might have been one of the turning points, because then we started really seeing a lot of like comic book movies. You know, um, you started seeing stuff like X-Men and the Spider-Man movies, and then Batman. The newer the Nolan Batman series, and where they were deciding to really, instead of doing something cheesy and campy, they were deciding to do them the right way, and it was because Hollywood and corporate America both, at some point, the light bulb went off. That hey, geeky people spend money. If it's something they like, they'll spend a lot of money, and we do. We all spend a lot of money on our hobbies, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or video games, movies, novels, comic books, uh, you name it. Collectibles. I mean, let's talk about merchandising for Pete's sake. I mean, uh, back in the day, and the merchandising thing probably started with Star Wars. You know, when the action figures for Star Wars came out, that was huge. And so um, my overall point is it's a great time to be a geek. Now we have these Comic Cons, which are drawing 100,000 people. We had our very first Comic Con at Salt Lake City last year. They were expecting, I think they said they were hoping to hit, I think 20,000 was the target that they wanted to hit, and we had 80,000 people at our Comic Con. First year, broke all the records for our first year Comic Con, and they're expecting. We've got 2 of them now scheduled for next year. We've got one in April, and we've got the Fan X, and then we've got the Comic Con in I think it's September. And they're expecting both of those to approach 100,000. Yeah, that's San Diego Comic Con numbers. So, in any case, so you can you're in geek nirvana. When you go to these things, and in the 80s we didn't really have anything like that. We had Gen Con, which was in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, for players of role-playing games, and that was started by Gary Gygax. And it was, to travel all the way to Lake Geneva was, cost prohibitive to a lot of people. And we didn't really have a lot of other options as far as conventions and those types of things go. So it was kind of a bittersweet thing, because you would have this Gen Con's coming up, and you'd be like, well, I can't afford to fly from California to Wisconsin, and then spend the money on a hotel and all these things, but it was, I say bittersweet, because it was like, how cool is that? They have this giant convention for all these gamers and stuff to get in and play and all that. And now, because it like I said, it's a great time to be alive as a geek. We have regional Comic Cons and game conventions and you name it all over the place now. So it's much easier to experience those types of things. We have, of course, I haven't even mentioned the internet. I mean, look at how grand that is for gamers. The fact that we can game online with one another, which, back in the 80s, you had the infancy of things like that, where you could have, there was the original Neverwinter Nights through America Online that you could, it was kind of the very first MMO. There was a limit on the servers, but you could have, I forget what the number of people were, but the problem with that was they charged you by the minute that you played of game time. So it would be ridiculously expensive to game that way that we do now. The way we get on to, say, World of Warcraft or something, and we're on all day long or something, you couldn't do that. If you were, I guess if your parents were rich or something like that, you could, but more than likely you could not do that back in those days. Now, we have unlimited broadband, and we have things like Skype and other ways, TeamSpeak and Ventrilo and all these things that we can do any number of different types of gaming over the internet. And it's absolutely fantastic. So, and to cap it off with, we even have there's even a dating site now, apparently, for geeks to find one another. It's called Geek to Geek, and apparently for you single folks out there, I guess it's the perfect place to meet your mate, because right out of the box, you already share interest in geek culture and those type, whether it's gaming or comic books or whatever it is. That's already out in the open. Where in the past, if you were a single guy and you went out on a date with a girl and you played Dungeons and Dragons and collected comic books, and you didn't know much about this girl, the last thing that you would do right out of the box would be to say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, I'm a dungeon master, you know, and I've got 6 boxes of vintage comic books and as a hobby, you just wouldn't you might scare her away. Now, of course, you might end up revealing that later and find out that she shared that interest, but it was very unlikely that that was the case. You certainly wouldn't advertise it right out of the gate. So, anyway, we're going on 11 minutes here, so I guess that's long enough. But overall, in general, I just wanted to say, because we're getting to that time of year where it's be thankful for everything. I think it's important for all of us, gamers and geeks, and all of us to be thankful that we are living in the time that we are living, because we are able to enjoy our hobbies and see things in the mainstream about our hobbies and things like that, and laugh along with other people that may not share them, and not feel like uh, we're the outcasts and all that stuff. It's kind of neat to be living in this time of age. So anyway, now we're going on 12 minutes. I just keep rambling. So that's it for this video. We will catch you guys on the flip side.